The mess aboard HMS Victory during Nelson's time was the heart and soul of life for the common sailor. It was where bonds were formed, meals shared, and stories swapped. Life aboard a ship of the line like Victory was often grueling, with long hours of labor, dangerous battles, and little time for personal space or comfort. Yet in the mess, sailors found camaraderie and respite, carving out a sense of community amidst the harsh conditions of naval life. This narrative is proudly brought to you by Polly Speaks For You. At Polly Speaks For You, we are committed to empowering individuals, especially those with disabilities or learning challenges, through innovative text-to-speech and voice recognition technology. Polly Speaks For You is more than just software. It's a tool for self-expression, connecting people with the world in meaningful ways. By blending the richness of history with cutting-edge technology, Polly Speaks For You demonstrates that every voice, whether preserving the past or shaping the future, has the potential to inspire. While we strive to make the story engaging, our primary focus is on storytelling itself. The visuals are secondary. We're showcasing the remarkable capabilities of text-to-speech software that bring these stories to life. The mess aboard HMS Victory during Nelson's time, particularly in the lead-up to the Battle of Trafalgar, offers a vivid snapshot of life below decks for British sailors. The mess refers not only to the place where the crew would eat, but also to the daily rhythm of life, camaraderie, and the challenges of living in close quarters at sea. Aboard HMS Victory, as with most ships of the line, the crew was divided into messes, each consisting of about 6 to 12 men who shared their meals together. Each mess had a designated leader, known as a messmate, who would help distribute the food rations for their group. Life in the mess was a balancing act of managing food, maintaining discipline, and finding moments of relaxation in a world governed by the strict routines of naval service. Daily life in the mess. The typical meal for sailors aboard HMS Victory was basic but nourishing, consisting of staples like hardtack, ship's biscuit, salted meat, and dried peas. Rum was also issued as part of the daily ration, leading to the famous tradition of the tot of rum. Meals were eaten on the lower decks, often in cramped, dimly lit spaces that were damp and occasionally infested with rats. Despite the hardships, the mess was where sailors bonded. It was a place where they could share stories, sing songs, and engage in friendly banter, building the camaraderie that was essential to maintaining morale during long voyages. Many sailors had been together for years, and their mess became a second family. Accounts from officers such as Lieutenant George Gibson, who served on Victory, recall the lively atmosphere of the mess. Below decks, the men gather in their messes, seated close at the table, hands rough from the work, yet eager for the respite of the meal. The talk is of the day's duties, and of course, the great admiral himself. Though humble the fare, there is a cheer in the mess that lifts the spirit of the whole ship. A life below decks, a world of its own. A life on HMS Victory was largely divided between the officers and the lower-ranking crew, with distinct social and physical separations. While the officers lived in more spacious and comfortable quarters, the average sailor was crammed into the lower decks. These were dark, damp, and often foul-smelling spaces, with hammocks slung in tight rows where men slept, ate, and lived side by side. Each mess, consisting of a small group of sailors, was like a miniature society. These men would not only eat together, but also share their lives, pooling their resources, telling stories, singing songs, and supporting one another in the many trials they faced. The strength of the mess bond was crucial, especially when the ship was far from land for extended periods. The food that sustained the men of Victory was far from luxurious. Sailors typically received daily rations of salted meat, hardtack, ship's biscuit, and peas or oatmeal. The meat, often pork or beef, had been heavily salted to preserve it, leading to its common nickname junk, a word that would also become synonymous with inferior food. Hardtack, the staple bread, was infamous for being rock-hard and often infested with weevils, which sailors would either tap out or consume for added protein. Sailors would sometimes dip their biscuits in water or stew to soften them, making them more palatable. The crew's daily issue of rum, known as the tot, was eagerly anticipated. This strong, dark spirit was diluted with water to make what was called grog. Rum not only added some cheer to the otherwise monotonous meals, but also helped keep up morale on long voyages. Officers, on the other hand, had access to finer fare, often purchasing their own food or having better quality provisions. Still, even among the officers, conditions could be uncomfortable in battle or during harsh weather. Strict routines and duties. Life in the mess was strictly regulated by naval routines. Each day was marked by the sounding of the ship's bell and the issuing of rations. The purser's department was responsible for distributing food, and any grievances about the quality or quantity of food were often aired here, sometimes resulting in tense moments. Sailors had to divide their time between meals and their various duties, which ranged from manning the guns to maintaining the ship's rigging. Admiral Nelson's presence aboard HMS Victory also had a significant influence on morale. Nelson was known for his personal connection to his men and his ability to inspire loyalty. Though he rarely ventured into the lower decks where the messes were held, his leadership echoed through the ship. Sailors often spoke of him in their messes, respecting his bravery and charisma. One crew member, able seaman William Cobb, later recalled, "Nelson, he was not like other officers, cold and far off. No, he was one who knew us by name, as though we were part of the same mess ourselves." A place for camaraderie and conflict. The mess was more than just a dining space. It was a center of community. In the cramped, challenging environment of the ship, sailors learned to rely on each other. The friendships forged here could last a lifetime, especially after surviving battles and the sea's many dangers together. Men bonded over tales of home, love, loss, and aspirations, sharing a drink and a moment of solace between their grueling duties. John Nichol, a sailor who served in the Royal Navy during the Napoleonic Wars, later wrote of the mess. "In the mess, we found relief from the hardships of the sea. There, amidst the hardtack and grog, we became brothers, trusting one another more than our own kin back on land. It was where I felt most human, even as the cannons roared above." But the mess could also be a place of tension. With long periods spent at sea and tempers often frayed by fatigue, hunger, or fear, disputes sometimes arose. Petty squabbles over food, space, or duties were not uncommon, and these could escalate into fights. While camaraderie was the norm, sailors were known for their volatile tempers, and disputes could lead to punishment or worse. Naval discipline and orders. Discipline aboard Victory was strict, and naval orders were often harsh. The Royal Navy was run with a rigid hierarchical structure, and disobedience could lead to severe punishment. Captain Thomas Hardy, Nelson's trusted friend and second-in-command, was responsible for ensuring that the ship ran smoothly and that the men followed their duties. For minor offenses, such as neglecting their duties or talking back to a superior, sailors could face punishments like flogging or being put in the stocks. For serious crimes like desertion or mutiny, the punishment could be as severe as hanging. Life in the mess was governed by a routine as disciplined as the naval orders above deck. The bosun's whistle was a constant sound that marked the hours, signaling the start of various duties or meals. The ship's log recorded daily events and the distribution of food, and it is in these logs that we see the precise ordering of the ship's life, right down to the servings of salted beef and grog. One particular entry in HMS Victory's log just days before the Battle of Trafalgar records the preparation of rations for the upcoming engagement. The supply of rum was noted as being adjusted, with slightly increased rations for the men to keep morale high, while the purser ensured that the ship was stocked with enough provisions to last through what was expected to be a major battle. The mess at Trafalgar. In the days leading up to the Battle of Trafalgar in October 1805, the messes aboard Victory took on an air of tense anticipation. Men knew they were headed into battle, and talk at mess would have been focused on the upcoming fight. Ship's logs from the time reflect the seriousness of the mood, as rations were adjusted for battle conditions, and the crew worked tirelessly to prepare the ship for combat. At Trafalgar, the messes were disrupted by the chaos of battle. Many sailors never returned to their mess tables, as casualties mounted and the wounded were carried below decks to the makeshift sickbay. HMS Victory surgeon William Beatty describes the scene below. As the roar of cannon echoed above, the decks were filled with the cries of the injured. Men who had once shared their mess now lay side by side, awaiting the attentions of the surgeon. Victory at Trafalgar was costly, and many of the sailors who had shared the mess did not survive the day. Nelson himself was fatally wounded in the heat of battle, and his loss was keenly felt across the ship. As the ship's bell tolled to mark the admiral's death, the mood in the surviving messes was somber. Victory had triumphed, but the cost had been heavy, and the close-knit bonds of the messes would never be the same. In the shadow of battle, as the ship approached Trafalgar in October 1805, the atmosphere in the messes shifted. Sailors, though used to the dangers of sea life, were well aware that they were heading into one of the most significant naval battles in history. Tension filled the air as the men prepared for combat. For many, the mess would be the last place where they could sit, eat, and speak with their comrades before they were called to their stations to face the French and Spanish fleets. During the battle itself, the messes were abandoned as the ship's 100 guns were manned and Victory engaged in the brutal exchange of cannon fire. Below decks, the gun decks were cleared for action, and the messes were transformed into makeshift hospitals where surgeons like William Beatty worked tirelessly to save the wounded. Blood stained the decks where the men had once sat eating their meager meals. In the aftermath of the battle, the messes aboard Victory were no longer the same. Many of the men who had shared meals and jokes were now gone, their hammocks left empty. Nelson's death cast a long shadow over the entire ship. Though the British had secured a historic victory, the loss of their beloved admiral shook the crew deeply. Men who had once spoken of Nelson with reverence in their messes now mourned him openly. One survivor of Trafalgar, able seaman Thomas Allen, later recalled, "We knew him not just as a leader, but as a man who cared for his crew. There was not a mess board that didn't speak of him with respect." When the battle was over, there was no cheer of victory, only silence for what we had lost. The legacy of the mess. The mess aboard HMS Victory is more than just a relic of naval history. It is a symbol of the human element within the grand narratives of war and victory. The camaraderie, humor, and tension that defined life in the mess remind us of the sailors who lived and died in service to their country. The name Victory may evoke images of battles and triumphs, but the true victories aboard her decks were often found in the bonds between men, the shared meals, and the fleeting moments of peace in the mess below. Today, Victory remains a preserved symbol of British naval history, and the messes aboard her still tell the story of the men who served. Visitors can walk through the lower decks where sailors once ate and slept, imagining the sounds of conversation and the clinking of grog cups, offering a glimpse into the lives of those who were part of Nelson's great and tragic triumph. Legacy of the mess today. Today, the messes of HMS Victory remain a symbol of the unity and resilience of the Royal Navy sailors. The mess was not just a place for food, but a community, a small haven in the difficult, dangerous life of a man of war. The spirit of those who lived and fought together aboard Victory can still be felt in the ship's preserved lower decks, where visitors today can imagine the lives of the men who served under Nelson and helped secure one of Britain's greatest naval victories. If you're enjoying this story, please remember to hit like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue creating content that educates and empowers. To learn more about South Africa's leading accessibility software and to support our dyslexic-friendly initiative, visit www.polispeaks4u.co.za. Drop a comment if you want more information. Thank you for watching this video.